tonight. Alright, so welcome to the first session of Blar13042, and what we're going to do tonight is we're just going to basically try and go through the first little section of the course, and I'll give you a few hints on what to look out for the assignment. I know that most of you guys jump right into the assignment, and that's a good thing. You don't want to do too much, you don't want to do too little, so try and keep it nice and balanced and see what you can get out of the course. Also, this is a course that follows the open door policy. You've got the questions and answers data forum, and you can at any point in time just add a question there. Alright, so I see Kent, you say that you don't have a microphone tonight. That's fine. If you have a question, just type it into the chat box, and I'll be able to chat it, see it from there, and we'll be able to answer it for you. Alright, so at any point in time, just interrupt me if you have something to say, if you don't agree with what I've said or anything like that, and we go from there. Alright, so just a short little history about the great projects, and obviously I'm not sure if you guys have seen, I made a small little introductory video earlier on that you can access from the website as well, and that will just a little welcome note talking about what we're going to do in the course, what the topics are, the different important dates that we have to focus on, especially the assignment dates, and of course census date. Alright, so have a look at that recording, and we'll, if you have any questions, just put a question up in the question and answers forum as well. Alright, so the key of this course is going to look at the construction industry and where it started out. And if we look at the history, the first real big projects that's documented really well seems to be the Egyptian pyramids. So that's way back 2000 before Christ, and that's it's a project on its own. So those of you guys who are into the pyramids, you'll know that they constructed them by floating these big blocks of sandstone down the Nile River, and they had to plan to coincide with the flooding of the river. So they had to make sure that by the time the flooding season starts, they're ready with the floating mechanisms that they're attached to the big stones, and that made it a lot easier for them. Obviously, it's still a mystery to me exactly how they got 4mm tolerances on those big blocks. Those of you guys who've been to Egypt, it's really something to go and see. In the press recently, there's been a lot about new developments or new discoveries in Egypt. That's also really interesting. So we'll see where that goes. The Great Wall of China, that's another great example of a construction project. It took a while to get that going. I think it's about 600 years that they took to do that. So it's not a simple project that was overnight. Right? If we look at the big projects that we see in Australia at the moment, as soon as it goes over 5 years, we start wondering about the complexity of it. Right? So most things around here gets done in about 4 to 5 years maximum. Also, the scope of the projects that we do these days aren't as grand as they used to be. Something that's really shortening the lifespan of projects and making them more expensive these days, the cost of labor. In Australia specifically, in comparison to other countries, that's something that we have to think about. All right. The Suez Canal, one of my favorites. Eiffel Tower, you guys can go and maybe Google all of these at your own time. These are all great ideas of projects. The Concorde, 1969, was still the only supersonic or successful supersonic jetliner that stayed in service for many, many years, only retired quite recently with the accident in Charles de Gaulle Airport. Also a grand example of over expenditure on a project. Right? So the Concorde project was way over budget, similar to the Sydney Opera House, even though we've spent too much money on it, it doesn't matter. Those were great projects. Most recently, the two projects that's really impressive, both of them in the United Arab Emirates, the Burj Al Arab and the Burj Khalifa. So you'll see those are really nice. I haven't been to the Burj Khalifa yet after its opening. I was there on the construction site. I did some work for them in 2004. So that's way back. The Burj Al Arab, nice hotel. Apparently the only 7-star hotel in the world. But then again, the Arabs like to use their own scale for luxury. So we don't really know if it's 7 stars. All right, so for your first assignment, one of the questions asks you to look at the Australian economy and specifically what the contribution of construction is to the economy. So what I've done here is I've just given you a little taste of the information that we have available to us. This is from the ABS website. The index there is 1350, and you can see there that I've collated the numbers for the last couple of years. So the 2012 figures will be available for you guys to check. Have any of you guys been on the ABS website yet to see if you can find this information? If you can show me a yes or a no. All right, so Julia, you typing something? No, sorry. Okay, that's fine. It's still early days, still the first week of the term. So there's still plenty of time for you guys. All right, then Joshua, you found some stuff already. And most probably, Josh, the stuff that you found will reflect what we see on the screen over there. All right, so we can see there the number of total residential buildings that have gone up from that 2008. What would be interesting, and there's a specific reason I left the 2012 figures out, would be to see if there's an increase or a decrease in the number of total residential buildings. All right, so remember that when you look at these analyses that you have to split them between the residential buildings and of course the more commercial type buildings and infrastructure. All right, so try and limit it to those 3 fields, and that will make it nice and interesting for us to evaluate at the end of the day. The percentage changes from the previous year, that the little bottom part of the table there. You can see that there was a tremendous drop between 2008 and 2009. Why do you guys think that that occurred? And if you want to give me an answer, you can either chat in the chat box or alternatively just click on the talk button and share your ideas with us. Anyone? Any ideas? Why is there such a big decline in this period over here, 2008 to 2009? So Julia, are you typing something in the chat box? Yep, there we go. It's the global financial crisis. If in doubt, we can blame the global financial crisis for almost anything. So if you're still paying off a big credit card debt, you can also blame the GFC for that. But yes, in that case, 2008, 2009 was definitely hardest hit by that. I'm thinking back to, I arrived in Australia 2009, and previously I started looking at the market, trying to see what the economy is doing, what the possibilities of employment are in Australia, and it was really difficult at that stage to find a suitable job. And obviously that's now fortunately changed around. 2009 to 11, we can see that there's been a slight increase there. A bit of a slowdown in the market 2010 to 2011, which is a bit of a concern for us, because obviously that might mean that the economy is not in such a good state as Wayne Swan would like us to believe. Right, so for the program at the university, for instance, last year we also had a negative growth. All right, so Julia, yeah, go for it.
I was just wondering whether other people had noticed any downturn in the amount of work that we've got, because I know, with my company alone, and we work in down the eastern coast of Australia, that there has been a downturn in the amount of work that we've been getting recently. Just wondering if other people have the same.
All right, the floor is open. The floor is open for anybody. If you guys want to share something, I can see Kent, you typing something at the moment. Anybody else? Any ideas? All right, so Wayne, yeah, just click on the talk button and go for it.
G'day, Joshua. Just I work at a TAFE, and one of the things is the we've actually lost a lot of apprentices in the construction industry down in Victoria, actually. So there's been a massive slowdown in probably both sections, more the commercial section than the housing section. But yeah, we just noticed a massive uptake of apprentices in the construction industry.
All right, great. Thanks for that, Wayne. I incidentally had a meeting with the TAFE here in Sydney this morning, the New South Wales TAFE, and it was really interesting. These guys are, everybody is preparing for, you know, cuts to the budget. The funding is really being cut in the educational sector. I think of all the states, Victoria has been hit the hardest. You know, so it's really out there, and people are, you know, everybody's not happy about it, but there's, you know, what can you do? Has the funding cuts personally affected you at all, Wayne? Oh, you have to press the button again.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right, okay. Yeah, the funding cuts have hit us really big time. We've lost, obviously, I don't know if you know Victoria, near the Melbourne Airport, but we've actually lost a lot of staff already in my TAFE sort of thing. And we're about to lose another 100 next year. And I'm also near the car industry as well in Victoria, so unfortunately it's all surrounded me. So I see other states as well lose a lot of jobs, but the TAFE's actually taken a fair big hit, sort of thing. So yeah, it's interesting times.
All right. Thanks for that, Wayne. Yeah, you can press the talk button again, and that will mute you. But yes, the auto industry has obviously, they've also been really hard hit. And, you know, we can see that on the news every day. So Kent has given us a message there. Kent, you say that you currently live in Townsville and that the amount of work or construction is at a low. However, a lot of work's in the tender stage with the work to begin at the end of the year. So, yeah, and luckily you're in a big project that's due for completion in 2014, so you're in a good position. Strange enough that you would say that these projects are due to start at the end of the year, because in my years of working in the industry, it was always everybody was holding off, because in December, sort of from the middle of November, you sort of start losing production, and nothing really picks up again until sort of mid-February, somewhere there. But yeah, interesting. Maybe next week you can give us some feedback on that. All right, great. So if we look at the next slide that I've got there for you, the value of the construction work done. And over here, what I've done is I've split it again. I've said total houses, other residential buildings, and private sector houses. So I wanted to show you that based on the data that you can get from the ABS website, you'll be able to perform or conduct your assignment really easily. And I mean, to get these numbers, it won't take you a very long time. Basically, if you put in a Saturday, say 3/4 of a Saturday or so, you should be able to knock these questions off reasonably easy. So if we look at the analysis of these, and we can see that the private houses there, and obviously these figures are in millions, it sort of overshadows the other residential buildings. So other residential buildings might include smaller structures, garages, anything like that that's associated with accommodation. You'll see the definitions on the ABS website. So yeah, Julia, go for it.
Does the other residential buildings also include like multi-res accommodation, you know, class 2 and 3s and that sort of thing?
That's correct. That's exactly right. So private sector houses, I think what I did there on this specific one, private sector houses, that would be freestanding, and the other residential buildings would be the classes that you described. So there is delimitation between those fields, so you can pick it up from the stats, which is really interesting. You know, it's always interesting spending time on the ABS website. Let's say you struggle to sleep at night, it's a good place to go and start, because it will put you to sleep eventually. But you know, they do have some interesting things there. For instance, the split between houses and other residential buildings. And you can see, once again, the numbers are reflected on to what we saw on the previous slide, maybe slightly better on this one. We can see a steady growth from 2008 onwards to 2011. Not as much, but still noticeable over there. All right, so yep, let's move on to the next slide. And the evaluation of alterations, that's the next interesting thing there. Once again, it's always a sort of a thermometer of the economy if we have a look at these stats to see how much money or how much free income is available in the market to spend on alterations. Because the moment people start spending on alterations, it means that the economy is in a slightly upturn or more enthusiastic trend. All right, so yeah, Julia, go for it.
Sorry, talk a lot here. I work as an access consultant, and we've just found just recently that even though the building approvals might have gone down for new buildings, as access consultants and doing a lot of renovations in it, that seems to be on the increase. So I'm not sure if other people have noticed that as well.
All right, that's a really good question. Thanks for that one, Julia. Anybody else in that situation? Have you noticed a decline in the new buildings and an increase in the alterations? Yes or no? You can click on the poll. If you have no idea, just click no so that we know. All right, so Kent, you once again. All right, so Kent he's not encountered it. I will say no. I'll put a little red cross next to my name there. Actually, I can change that and say yes because I do actually know about it. So yes, playing with the system, trying to figure out exactly how it works. But yes, Julia, coming back to what you said previously, you're an access consultant. So from that point of view, you guys must have a lot of work with the new laws that came in quite recently, because any kind of alteration that you now do has to be compliant. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah, and the premises standard and all of the other standards. But yeah, that certainly has increased our workload. We weren't sure how it would affect us. I do work for a company, like it's a multi-discipline company, so we do building code consulting and fire engineering and access consultancy, and we've just noticed that there might be a slight downturn in building approvals, in the number that we're getting, but from an access perspective, it's gone through the roof. It's really busy.
Well, which is good. You know, there's good and bad stress, and the good stress is you've got too much work, and the bad stress is you've got too little work. You know, so while it's raining, you know, use a big bucket and you know, take as much as you can. You know.
Absolutely.
That's unfortunately true for our industry. You know, while it's going good, you really need to get in there, because it does have a little bit of a conjuncture. Every 8 years or so, the cycle changes. What do you guys think will happen next year with the federal election? What will happen to the economy? Anybody's got an opinion on that? Julia, you've got the mic open, so go for it.
Well, I think you know, just here in Queensland with Campbell Newman coming in and the change there, I think that's made in terms of government buildings and just government projects in general. That's been quite significant here in Queensland, and I guess depending on what happens, I think there will be potentially some very significant changes.
Strange enough, I've been living in Queensland now for the last 3 years and only moved to Sydney about 2 months ago, and I'm amazed at how insular the different states are. You know, living in New South Wales now, I get very, very little Queensland news anywhere in New South Wales, because everything is just focused on this specific state, you know. Which is strange. Coming from a small country where I'm from originally, everybody knows everything about everything. And, you know, the news, there's one big channel and they just blast it over the whole country, you know. So that's interesting to see how the different governments, state governments, handle things differently. Coming back to what we heard earlier on about what Wayne said about the education sector in the TAFEs, you know, Victoria, they've been totally gutted, and I think it's coming in New South Wales and Queensland as well. You know, there's people making a lot of moves on it.
Mm.
All right, so yeah, interesting stuff. Let's have a look at the next slide. There you can see the alterations. So if we look at the construction activity over the last couple of years, and this is typically the type of graph that you might want to include in your presentation or your assessment item, looking at what's happened in the last 10 years or so. So the total building over there, we can see that it's sort of stagnant. It is increasing. You can see there's a small little bit of a growth there between 2011, 2010, and we saw that on the previous numbers as well. Decline 2008, as Julia pointed out, the GFC. So yeah, Kent, you've posted, I just check on the chat room, you said there that you found that in northern Queensland, with Campbell making government departments redundant or at least reducing employees. In the light of this, even though government building works go ahead, yeah, I agree. I've got a few friends that lost their jobs in the latest restructures from Campbell. So yes, strange enough, the capital works still go on. It's as if the operational budget gets cut, spending less on people, more on capital. So interesting times. If we look at the difference between total and building, what do you think is represented in the line that's blue there, the total construction? What do you think is that representing?
Infrastructure?
All right, there we go. Infrastructure, mines, buildings.
Mining.
Yeah, mining is really big out there. Bridges, any kind of gas to liquid plants maybe. One or two of the states recently opened up, desalination plants. I think Adelaide is running at 100% at the moment for the first time ever. So that's that's interesting to see that they're actually getting there. So yes, that's a big difference between total construction and of course just the building. So yep, there we go. Tunnels. Oh yeah, tunnels in Brisbane. Yes, definitely. Incidentally, I just bought a house in Sydney, and after doing the title search and making sure that the place isn't built on a sinkhole or something like that, I'm on top of a proposed tunnel to the northern side of Sydney. So obviously there's still some money to be spent by the local governments, the state governments. Traffic, of course, is a real problem over here. Fortunately, I live right next to a train line, so that makes it a lot easier for me to commute into the city.
Sorry.
Yeah, go for it, Julia. You've got a mic open. I mean,
I've got colleagues that work in New South Wales and Sydney and Canberra, and they were saying that since, and somebody jump in by all means and correct me if I'm wrong, but when the new guy was voted into New South Wales, he apparently promised a whole heap of things, and then 1 year in they were saying, oh, you haven't fulfilled any of your promises, and then all of a sudden the button's been pushed and there's heaps of work happening with public transport, trains, and just in general public transport. I know for us specifically it's trains, but I don't know, is that correct? Does anybody come from Sydney or New South Wales that knows that?
Anybody else in the room that can shed some light? Joshua, I see you back again. Welcome back again. So, yep, and Josh, you typing a message. Have you got a microphone, or are you struggling to hear us? Oh, okay, so internet troubles, no worries. If you get stuck with the internet troubles, you guys can just give me a call at some point and we can set up a session and test your connection and make sure that it works. Kim, I see you from Townsville, that's fine. But yes, Julia, there's a lot happening, a lot of talk happening about railway stations and train lines. There's a small little area close to where I live which is called Cherrybrook, and the government has already started buying up the property for where they're going to put the station. The thing about these projects is that it's not quick. So they're talking about 2020 or 2022. So it's a couple of years away, and by that time, we'll have 5 other governments, or would have had 5 other governments. And I think the easiest thing for the government to do is to promise, and when it comes to deliver, they'll say, oh, but the previous government left it in such a big shambles, it's impossible for us to deliver on our previous promises, and it's sort of an escape that they always use. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Well, yeah, that's, well, we'll see what happens next year. So by a show of a yes or no marks, is Julia going to stay in power? Who says yes?
I have no idea.
You don't have to answer if you don't want to. So Kim, you say no. Kent, you also say yes. All right. So the other person in the room is me. I'm called Slate as well. It's a control device that I use. So there we go. Yes, it's a difficult question. We'll see what happens. As a foreigner, at the moment, I'm only getting my passport for Australia next year in August. Then I'm here 4 years. At that stage, I'll be able to vote. But at the moment, I'm allowed to sit on the fence and throw stones both ways. So it's
I love
easier. But yes, sometimes, I find myself watching these sessions where they're in Parliament, and I cannot believe what's going on there. But yeah, it must be, it's one of those things. All right, so let's carry on. If we look at the gross domestic product, and obviously these slides, you can use it for your assignment if you want, or you can just go back to the source. All of this stuff comes from the ABS website, so it's there. I've given you hints where to go and find it. So Kim, a school room comes to mind. Yes. All right, so Kent, a schoolroom comes to mind. Yes, it does. Are you talking about Parliament? I take it. And yeah, Julia, go for it.
Oh, no, sorry. I don't know what that was about.
I thought you had your microphone on for a second there.
Oh, it is still on. I just need to turn it off. Hang on.
All right, so if we look at these, the information there, the gross domestic product, we can see there increase from 2008 to 2009, about 7 and a bit. So every year we're looking to increase around about 7%. So it would be interesting, and you'll be able to find it for 2012 to see if that average there is maintained for the year. Because if you really think about it, why do you think it doesn't grow any faster? Why are we stuck on 7%? Is it because of the population? Is it because of the drivers? What about the carbon tax? I mean, we recently saw the introduction of the carbon tax. So, show of hands, just by saying yes or no, will the carbon tax influence the economy negatively in Australia? Who says yes, it will affect us negatively? So, show of hands, I'll put up a yes there. All right, so Kent, you reckon no, no, no. All right, so yep. All right, it's going to be interesting to see exactly where the carbon tax is going. And at the moment, I can't really see, it's still too early. There isn't a yes and a no button. Yes, that's true. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see exactly how it works and how it pans out. It's still early days. Give it a year or so. And obviously we'll see what Tony Abbott does if he gets into power. The big question is, of course, who's really in control of Australia? Is it the government or is it the big mining companies? So those are the questions that we have to leave you with. All right, looking at the percentage change from the previous year, this column over here, the construction there is really, that's the one that we sort of want to look at. Let's see if I can, there's a minus, there's a small little decline between 2009 2010. So it's always interesting to see why that happened. And that's something that you maybe in your assessment can interpret. All right? So the big thing there is always try and make sure that you interpret what's happening. All right, so if we look at the role of the construction industry, it's based on the United Kingdom. Like many things in Australia, we sort of inherited the basic design of the UK for many things. So we've got the clients and we've got the design industry and the architects and the professional team with engineers, and we've managed to bring across lots and lots of their contracts. So in the Australian standard suite of contracts, you'll see a lot of the Institute for Civil Engineers contract basic principles that's come through over the years. The same in how we do the management of construction projects and maintenance and renewal. Something that has a big influence on how we do it over years, as I said previously, the cost of labor. So because labor is such a scarce resource for us, we really need to focus on doing things better and doing things more frugally. Going to any hotel anywhere in Australia these days, you'll see that they've got water-saving shower heads. All of those things. Everything is designed around trying to make sure that the resources are maintained. And of course, the same for the construction industry. It's one of the major sources in the GDP. So try and do our little bit as well for that. All right, so you guys can have a look at the resource material. There's some more information about how the industry is set up. We'll talk in later sessions about clients and the professional team in detail, and we'll talk about their roles and responsibilities as well. All right, so if we look at what goes where, and we've spoken about this already, basically that graph that I showed you, the residential stuff, single dwellings, multiple dwellings, Julia, the different classes that you've mentioned, high density housing estates, anything like that. We don't see as many golf estates in Australia as in other countries around the world. Even though the US economy is slowing down, construction is still booming over there, new developments. The same with a small country like Africa. The whole of the country will fit into a state like Queensland, for instance. The big difference is, of course, they've got legally about 55 million people living in close proximity to each other, as opposed to Queensland, which is really, really big, and most of the population live in the southeast corner. All right, all along the coast, and then of course you guys up in Cairns. All right, so we won't forget you guys up there. I still haven't been there. At some point in time, I'll have to go and do a site visit and let you guys know. And Townsville, of course, yes, haven't forgotten about Townsville. What can we say? So I'm waiting for that invitation. That's the main thing. All right, so the non-residential stuff. Commercial buildings, shopping centers, government buildings. We've seen a slowdown in the government stuff. Schools. There was a big boom in schools quite recently. That sort of slowed down. They've moved Peter Garrett in there. Not sure why he's in there. Maybe he should go back to making music at some point. But yes, he's the education guy, and it's a legacy of Julia Gillard. She was at one point the real push person for education. So we'll see how that changes in the next 18 months or so. My big interest area is, of course, engineering or the infrastructure projects. Coming from a oil and gas background, minerals and mining. I spent many years in that area, so it's always interesting to see how that industry develops. So minerals and mining, Western Australia, one of the questions that we are going to have to ask at one point, they've asked it before, do we want them to be their own little country, or can they be incorporated? These are all the topical questions. Maybe for that show on TV called Can of Worms, we can send it through. All right, and then of course product handling, manufacturing plants. Those are really big industry in and around Brisbane, New South Wales, Sydney. Food processing, it's really big business around here. We don't necessarily import everything. So what are the main drivers for our industry? And I think the biggest one there that I wanted to add today is nature. Recently, well, you guys all know of the floods in Rockhampton and those areas. We were cut off for about 12 days. So obviously when nature comes through and wipes out the town, that drives the industry to go and put the infrastructure back if you look at what's just happened in New York, what's happened with Sandy, I think was the what she was called. She went in there, made sure that everybody understood exactly where nature is and can still wreak havoc. Lots and lots of millions will be spent on recovering New York. So there's one driver for the industry. An interesting article was on the news yesterday. Strange enough, the movie 2012, where they portray the end of the earth, also starts with the flooding of New York. And guess what? Towards the end of 2012, New York's underwater. So we'll see exactly how that plays out. All right, so a few other drivers the community needs. All right, so do we need sports centers? Do we need support areas? Infrastructure is a big thing for the community. Transport, sprawling cities. Sydney, Brisbane, those areas are really difficult because of the sprawling that's occurring. It becomes really expensive. If you take a state like Queensland, for instance, it's really vast distances that you have to cover with very little money. So that's maybe a reason for the Bruce Highway to be in a poor state. So those Kent, you guys that's up there in Townsville, if you ever take the road down to Rockhampton, it's not a fun road to drive. It's a single line, and it's full of potholes and stuff. Some of the potholes are about the size of a Mini. So if you have a Mini, don't use it on that road. At any point, if you guys have anything to add, Julie, you've gone quiet, so I'm sort of waiting for your support here. What else do you guys think will drive? What else do you think will drive the industry?
I don't know. Sorry. I'm taking notes as I'm listening to this.
Oh, okay. All right. So yeah. Well, you can see there's a few ideas. The new industries. I mean, technology. Our industry is really slow on developing new technologies. A brick is a brick, and a brick's been a brick for quite some time. And you know, it's not like the auto industry, for instance, that's really going places with new developments. If you go to Germany, visit the BMW plant or the Mercedes plant, those guys spend millions on developing new technologies for the products that they manufacture. Our products are a little bit different. You know, if you're a building surveyor, you look at it differently. If you're a construction manager, you look at it differently. If you're a building designer or an architect, maybe aspirations for design, these are the blocks that you have to play with, and those are the products. You know, it's not going to change rapidly. Something that's really, if any of you guys are interested in doing some research and you're interested in chasing something for the future, BIM is your ticket. All right, so if you can get into BIM at any point in time now, let's say now before the next year or so, you know what they say about bandwagons. If you see a bandwagon, it's too late. All right, so the BIM bandwagon is waiting for you to get onto it. All right, so if you really want to put yourself way ahead of the rest of the crowd, that would be your ticket to go out for. All right, so keep that in mind next time that you're a little bit down and you've had too much red wine, thinking about your career opportunities. All right, so the importance, politics, yep, it's always going to be a chessboard in politics, and there's different players. All right, so the labor unions and you know, they're going to be the pawns on the chessboard. They're going to move around and be moved around by the government, and they're going to play the game as well. They've got many members that they have to look after. They also influence productivity. So we have to ask the questions, is it positive, is it negative? What about the community? What drives a voter to go and vote? Is it because that they might cop a fine if they don't go, or is it because they really feel that they have to contribute to that goal of whoever they're voting for? And then, of course, the contribution to the GDP, our community development. What about the infrastructure for the community? Are we focusing on just the bare essentials, or do we actually have enough cash to go around and say, all right, yeah, we can actually give you these additional luxuries? Thinking about small towns that's far away from sort of the eastern seaboard, the towns, let's say 100, 200 k's from the coastline, it really gets rural quickly. I remember leaving Rockhampton, on weekends, trying to go and explore the area, and it really takes a long time to get anywhere because the distances are just so big, and that obviously influences the way that we look at development. All right, so those are the important that we have to look at. If we look at the common problems that we face in the industry at the moment, unrealistic expectations is a big favorite of mine. It's all about over-promising and under-delivering. And if we look at our contractors and suppliers of construction work, typically they're their own worst enemies because they're so eager to get the jobs that they are willing to over-promise and say, offer more than what's actually possible in terms of a specific project. Right? So the other downside of that is, of course, the scope. Scope management. Our clients have a big white house on the top of a hill in mind, but they don't know how to get there, and obviously that's going to influence it because they're not familiar with what they want. Unnecessary cost constraints. Why do we have to limit ourselves on each and every project? Is it really necessary? Is it delivering the goals that we want to achieve? Right, so those are the things that we can talk about some more. And then, of course, the last one there, red tape. The bigger the organization, the more red tape we have. The bigger the government, the more red tape it's going to be. And when you guys finish your degrees and you have your passports and you start thinking about going overseas for 2 or 3 years, go work in the Middle East, go work in Dubai or those areas, go and experience the rest of the world. You have to do yourself a favor and go and work in Africa as well. It will just blow your mind because in Africa, everything that you think you know is no longer relevant. It's just totally different over there. It's great fun. So it's also quite cheap if you want to go. Think about that, but talk to me before you go. So, yep, down the line. All right, so that's what I wanted to cover for tonight. Just a short little intro. Next week we'll go into more depth into the next areas of topic 1. We'll spend a lot of time on that. Remember, next week we won't actually have a lecture. It's only the following week that we'll have one again. So any questions at this point in time? If you have a question, you can either click on the talk button or click on the hand button, and I'll be able to see it. So if you want to put your hand up, or if you don't have a question, you can just say no, and I'll move on to giving you guys a few tips for the assessment. All right, so Kent, I know you don't have a question. Thank you very much. Wayne also not. Julia, I'm surprised you're not saying anything. I'm sort of have to deal with that rejection now.
Sorry. You've explained it so well.
All right, so I'll put a smiley face up there. All right, so there we go. All right, so excellent. So let's have a quick look at assignment number 1. I know all of you guys are really eager to get going on this one. Let's start out with the Parkinson's principle. I always put this into the first lecture for each of the courses. So how it works is this is the possible duration that we have. The graph is really self-explanatory. And what it is basically that the more time you have available, the more time it will take. All right, so there's our deadline. There's our probability curve of actually completing this assessment on time. The next slide over there, actually, this is my favorite slide of all times when it comes to the student syndrome. And it says there that when we finish tonight, you guys are going to be really enthusiastic about doing this assessment. You're going to remember that I said you'll be able to do this in one single day, and you're going to be enthusiastic. Tomorrow at work, you're going to do a few Google searches, look at the ABS website, by Friday night, your sort of enthusiasm has dropped down again, and it will stay at that low level until the Sunday night before it's due. And then obviously there's going to be that huge increase in effort to meet the deadline, and that represents your most likely duration from our previous slide. So my advice, try not to get caught in that one. It happens easier than you think. All right. So the first question, we ask you, or I ask you to examine and prepare a report on the trend in the construction sector of the Australian economy over the last 10 years, and I give you a few bullet points there to focus on. All right, so basically there you can find everything that you need in tonight's lecture and on the ABS website. All right, you can go and find everything there. I've given you a few hints on the tables to look at. 1350 is the indice that you'll start at, and that will give you a good area to start. Obviously, it's not the whole assignment, but it's a good start. So you'll have to look at the employed persons, do a little bit of a search to find unemployment, and then you have to sift it out and make sure that we focus on our industry. In some cases, you'll have to combine the figures. Right? So somebody this week asked a question about combining figures. I posted it onto the Q&A forum, so go and have a quick look at it. I said yes, combine it. And for this question, remember to identify the correct information, and then you'll have to collate it into the correct format. And obviously, the more graphs and colors that you can use, I like seeing stuff, so the more colorful your assignment, the easier it is to mark it. And then, of course, really important for me is that you interpret what you have found. Right? So go out there, see what's available, and then interpret it in your own opinion. All right? So typically the same things that we did tonight is, what do you think? What caused the global financial crisis? Was it because of financial difficulties in 2001 with Enron? Was that the start of the GFC? And you can start thinking a little bit outside the box there. All right, so that's the first question that we have to look at. Nothing really difficult there. Last one there, identification and analysis of the long-term trends. All right, so remember, interpretation, opinion, really important there. All right, so question 2, this one is, Julia, specifically for you, because you got the question right, the global financial crisis, and now you can take this question a little bit further. What's happening in the markets? What's going to happen in terms of, is it overvalued? How is it going to affect the economy? If we look at the recent press, you'll see that about 30% of all homes in Queensland are over bonded, all right, so which means that we owe more money than what they're worth. All right, so the banks are also not in the business of selling properties, but they will if they have to, and they'll sell them at a loss. Remember, they're only concerned about their own risk. So what's that going to be? How is that going to influence our industry, our economy in the next couple of years? All right, so once again there, interpretation, really important. I think the biggest hint that I can give you for the assessment is the marking schedule that I've included in the assessment there. You can see it there. It's on page 2 of 2 of the assessment. And there you can see, you can, by just doing a nice start, by filling out a nice cover page, checking that you've got page numbers and your general presentation is ready, and you've done a little bit of time there, making sure that you don't have any spelling mistakes, really important. You can already get 10% of the 100. So that's a good start. A good idea is also to follow the way that I've set out the marking scheme, so introduction and background. If you want to use those same type of headings, that's always a good idea. Then I don't need to go and try and find the stuff, but it's up to you. Remember, you've got academic freedom. You can answer the question. If you think my headings suck, that's fine. You can use your own headings, and maybe yours are better than mine. That's also good. Something that I forgot to mention earlier on, just on the spelling, when you guys post to the forum, those question and answer forums, really good stuff so far, thanks for that. Just make sure that you do a spell check before. I had one tonight that I tried to decipher and was really difficult because I just couldn't. I thought this guy was, well, I thought it was in a different language for one of the other courses that I teach, but it turned out to be English. Thus, there were no spaces between the words, and it was in text language, like on a mobile phone. So yeah, I still marked it. Alright, so there's all the hints that we have for the first assessment. Obviously, once again, remember that penalties will apply, 5% per day for the available marks. Try and be on time. And I think this one is due on the 28th of November, which isn't that far away. So any questions from anybody about the assessments or anything that we did tonight? Alright, so nothing from Kent, nothing from Wayne. Thanks, Julia, and also Kim. Thanks for joining us, Kim. So now you know it works and you can always join us, no hassles. I've switched off the video. Next week I'll maybe switch on my own video just so that you guys can see who I am. The video tends to make it really slow, so people, Josh, I think you're on a little bit of a slower connection. I can see your connection lagging behind the rest of us. So when I have the video on, it really chows up the bandwidth. So you can see my nice little photo there. At that stage, I'll still add hair. Since then, I actually shaved it off. So yep, alright, so that's our first session. The next session will be in 2 weeks' time, same place, same time. Yep, if there are no further questions, we might call it a night, and I'll see you guys next week. Alright, so yep, Kent, I see.
Thanks very much, Josh. It's been really good.
Alright, great stuff, thanks, no problems at all. And Josh, were you going to say something? Alright, so thanks from Josh and Ken. Good night. Thanks, Kim. Sleep well. Yes, it's already 9 o'clock in New South Wales. So yeah, I'm an hour ahead of you guys. You know, Queensland is forever lagging, and it's all because of those
it's always
cows.
Queensland's fault.
Yeah, it's because of the cows and the curtains that will fade in the sunlight.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Sometimes you have to smile about daylight savings. I must say it is confusing because I've caught myself out either being an hour early or an hour late for a meeting. So
it happens all the time. It really does. And to be honest, my boss, my immediate boss, is based down in Melbourne, so I always have to factor that in. It's it can be really, really painful, especially when you set up meetings and things like that.
Yeah. I must say, Outlook makes it a lot easier. The university uses Outlook, so whenever somebody schedules a meeting, it sort of automatically knows that I'm in New South Wales.
Yes.
And it sort of adjusts my calendar for that. But it's typically the meetings that I schedule myself that I tend to stuff up. Because like tonight, I almost missed this one, because I thought, gee, where's everybody? And I realized, oh, okay, it's another hour before you pitch up.
Yeah. And that's what I think, because it's a, it's a distance education, everyone's all over the place. It can be really awkward to get the timing right.
I think the guys in Western Australia, they're worst off because they're just way on the other side. And that creates a problem as well, because I think they, when it's 5 o'clock in Western Australia, I think it's 3 hours behind us or something.
Well, they're 2 hours behind, but if they've got daylight saving, they're going to be the same. Oh, they don't have daylight saving, do they?
I don't think they do, yeah. Well, it doesn't matter. At the moment, I don't think we have any students, so. Alrighty, cool. I'll see you guys later, and have fun. If you have any questions, post it on the Q&A place, and if we need another session, I'm happy to run another session anytime.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. That's been really good.
Alright, great.
Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye.
Thanks, Josh.
Later, bye.